rather than just having Washington as the high end, we also have people that argue we shouldn't be using Jackson and Deschutes, on the other side of things, particularly when we're talking about bargaining units. So, we have Washington that's going to be high. We have other counties we're using it at low, and the whole point is to kind of sit in the middle of that grouping because we sit in the middle population-wise too. If you look at the average of the populations. The one thing I'll say about the DA in particular is I do remember doing compensation looks at the prosecuting attorneys underneath her, and the one position that was way out of market was the assistant DA position, or chief deputy, whatever they call it, was way above market when we looked at that position. So to try and bring the DA above that position that's already out of market, and it got out of market for a lot of reasons in the history. So I don't know if we can fix that by putting the DA over, or whether we put the DA more into market and let that position slowly fall back out of compression over time. It's a question for everybody here is, which way do you fix that compression issue when that particular salary is out of market?
Right. Although, if I may respond specifically to the DA question, if you look at attachment 2, page 1, attachment 2 is the salary compression reports, and as has just been brought up, the position that we were looking at, that chief deputy DA position, is listed in your chart there, attachment 2, page 1 again, at 164,000 something, which is above that district attorney. The next one down from that position, which is currently vacant incidentally, but it's still there as a potential position, is the prosecuting attorneys, which I believe are a bargaining unit. Mm-hmm. Or
yes,
okay.
The Prosecuting Attorneys Association.
And for them at that 139 level. And so the thought was too that even if that position, that we had a discussion around this because that position is vacant, and in HR you always look at positions, not people. So you kind of see, well, this is the position, and someone could be hired into that. Of course, it doesn't mean just because someone's not in it right now, that doesn't mean it's not there as a potential hire. But even with that 139 number, that seemed, and I don't know the history behind that position, but we sort of looked at it, not just that position, but ones under it as well, to try to figure out kind of what we thought was appropriate for the DA position in terms of compression. But
Commissioner Lightman?
So this relates back to Washington County again, and with regard to the commissioners, because I think they have kind of an odd makeup. They have one full-time commissioner as the chair, but the other four, I believe, are classified as part-time and make about $40K a year. So how did you just base it on the chair of the board only, or when you look at Washington County's compensation regarding commissioners, obviously the other electeds that's a little bit different because they're all full-time elected, but the commissioners clearly have a different makeup than just about any county in the state. Unless you go to the east side with the judges and the commissioners there. So.
And you're correct, and what you're referring to, I'll get to with respect, if I could maybe, we saved it for the end in part because it's a long discussion. Yeah. It is attachment 1, page 5, and you are right, and that's one thing we did talk about. But if I may continue with DA, then assess from, and we certainly will get to that if that's all right with everybody. Okay, thank you, but thank you for pointing that out. And at that point, I may ask you more lighter on that issue. So DA, year 1 DA, that's right. So I think that was actually it for year 1 on DA that we had. And we're, okay.
Darcy, just one thing to note, based on the comments that were made about the deputy position being above market, I think that conversation was held with the board, and you took a look at the numbers.
Yes, so I did a market analysis with the chief deputy district attorney, and we are actually in market and under market in part of the range, and then over market in the other part. So I think in the past we were really over the market, but we've actually moved more to market than in the past. So yes, we did take
that was a couple of years ago. So
yeah, and it has moved to in market.
Okay.
Thank you. And as a reminder, we're looking
We have
for
one more question.
Oh,
So, am I right when I read this, that position is vacant?
Correct.
And do we plan to keep it that way?
That's up to the DA to run that department. She chose to leave it vacant and hire more deputy DAs with the money and take on some of the duties. So she's been working a lot of extra hours to kind of take on that position. That was a budget decision on her part to leave that vacant.
And the one thing I'll add too is that we were, again, not just the compression issue, but also the internal equity issue with the county council position, just as a reminder. Those are two different things that went into our thoughts about the DA. Moving to the assessor then, and so now we are attachment 2, page 2, which now I can't find in my packet, here we go, which talks about compression, and then also attachment 3, going back to the question of director salaries. And again, the main part for this one is attachment 1, and for the assessor, it's now page 1. So again, kind of follow through. I know we're kind of in the weeds, but attachment 1, page 1. First of all, we found that the assessor had no increase since 2008. We also found, as we looked at the issue of salary compression, that the assessor was paid less than that position's subordinate by 11.9%. It was also under, that was the compressions in attachment 2. It was also under average for department directors, which again is attachment 3. Now, we did focus on base salary as we looked at other counties. And as before, we did the 5-county analysis, which did include Washington County. In this case, we noticed one thing about the duties of the position. And when you're in HR, you look at, titles are one thing, but someone's title in one place could mean something very different from a title in another place. So you look at duties more than title, and experience needed, education, those kind of things. And we found that Clackamas County is the only one, I believe it's the only one of the other 5 counties that we're looking at that has both the tax and assessment role for the assessor. So the other 4 counties listed did not have as robust a job, if you will, or robust job duties as Lane County has for its assessor. And because of that, we wanted to give more weight to Clackamas County. So what we did is we still took the average of those 5 county comparators, but then we took that average and to give the extra weight to Clackamas because the jobs are more aligned, took the average of Clackamas again. So kind of double counted Clackamas, if you will, because the job duties were more similar to Lane County. So currently we found that the position here was 11.7% below the market in terms of total comp. What we're suggesting, and the number 16,812.20 as a dollar increase for year 1. That's a big number at 16.6% on the base. So again, it's a big percentage. Although that also may speak to the fact that the number started lower, because obviously the lower number you start with, the higher percentages when you increase it. That would move the position to 3.4% above market total comp. Eliminate the compression as well, and also address the pay equity issue. And just one kind of rule of thumb in HR that usually if you're looking for something to be 5% above or below, within a 5% range is sort of seen as within market. So you might be 5% below or 5% above. So in this case, we'd be moving to 3.4% above the market total comp in year 1 for the assessor position.
So with the proposed base, that still puts them lower than any department head.
Let me go check that out.
At 118,337, correct?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so that'd still be the lowest paid, quote, department head,
Elected official department.
elected official, either way, yeah.
Commissioner
I'm
Sorensen.
back on my soapbox about private sector. It seems like assessor is one of those positions, more like lawyer or computer operator, where there are, and maybe nurse, where there are private sector comparators, and it's harder to find them because if you ask private sector people what they're paying, but on the other hand, you can find out what jobs are being offered at. That is public.
This is true. On the other hand, we also wanted to try to keep equity across the board with all the different positions we're looking at. There's only 5 positions that are elected. One of them has 5 people in, obviously, but you know what I mean. And the thought was, since we had enough of the public county external comparators, we didn't want to divert too much from that. You're right, probably assessor and, well, DA we talked about perhaps could be that, although also a county administrator, again, that's not an elected official, so it's not within our purview, but just because it came up before. It could be hard, how would you compare private-wise? You know, and in some ways, it's sort of the individual making that decision. Someone could, in any of these positions, frankly, could be able to make more as a salary or in private sector, but part of what they choose, we think, this goes back to the recruitment and retention thing. We want to make the salaries right enough. I won't say high enough, good enough, generous enough. I would say right enough to get people who might still make more money doing something else. Let's say being a
But
lawyer.
just to take a more aggressive approach,
Yeah.
would it be fair to say that zero attention was paid to private sector in recommending these salaries? Would that be fair?
In terms of comparators, yes, we did not compare to private.
No, you didn't say, well, on that assessor thing, they really could make more money in the private sector in a good economy like now. So we should like enhance that up a little bit.
I think it's a fair comment. Yeah.
Other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm not following something. So if you look at the assessor, and the average is 120,000, he makes 101,000, right?
Which,
On page one of, it's actually the first, this thing.
Is it an attachment?
Average is 120. Yes.
180%, yeah. So the
Attachment
difference
one, page one.
between 120 and 101 is about 119, but you're recommending a raise of 16,812. So
I see.
how does that relate to the,
Yeah. I just want to be clear, you're looking at attachment one, page one, and it's sort of a third of the way down, which is annual base salary on the left.
Yeah.
And it says 120 for the comps and 101 for lane. Okay. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So the first number that we always look at is total compensation. And at the very bottom of that chart in the yellow is, without any increase in salary, what the current position in the market is on a total compensation basis. That's the 11.7%. So that means that the assessor on a total compensation basis is 11.7% under the market average. And the market average is the number next to it, which is 129,747.65.
so does that include fringe insurance?
Yes, it includes
So that's
insurance and
where you
auto
get
and
to.
all that.
Okay.
So that's really the first number that we look at, and in some of the, at least one of the positions, we tag to that number. But what the board decided in this particular position is that because of the compression, the differential between the assessor and his highest paid subordinate was so big, this, what it was, 11.8%, I believe, that we chose to address look at it on a base salary basis and backed into a base salary increase. And then at the end of the day, after applying that, we end up 3.4% over market on a total compensation basis. On an average salary basis, yes, we're still under market. If you compare that 120.62 number, we will be under the average on the base salary, but on a total compensation basis, we're above market. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Okay.
Good enough.
Two different, line items that you're looking at.
I'd like to suggest that you guys finish your presentation and we hold questions
Okay.
for the deliberation so we can stay on.
Moving to sheriff then, and so again, attachment 4, page 1 has this sort of big picture view, and then attachment 3 talks about director salaries, and 2 is the compression issue again. So in this case, it's attachment 2, page 3 on the current sheriff salary compression. And this is a little bit of an unusual situation, unlike the other elected positions, because the ORS requirement is that this person in this role, this position, must pay more than subordinates. That's in the law. So unlike the other positions, if we did nothing, you might still have a situation where you as a budget committee or the Board of County Commissioners would have to actually direct HR to do some kind of increase anyway to stay within the law. So we want to get ahead of the law a little bit. Right now, the position is currently slightly above the chief deputy. If you look at the, where am I looking, comparison, I'm on the wrong, attachment 2, I'm sorry. Assessor, attachment 2, page 3. Sorry, I know we're jumping around a little bit. But that's it's attachment 2, page 3. It says current sheriff salary compression report. As you can see, the current position of sheriff, the annual is the 138, and then the assistant department director is 136. So that's very close there. And in addition, that chief deputy position is eligible for COLA and merit increases in 2019 and 20. So clearly that would lead to a greater compression issue, or even a case like we had with one of the previous positions where the number 2 person is making more than the number 1. And again, if you did nothing, you might still under the law have to take some action. What we did again was looked at the average base salary for the 5 county comparators. So in this case, again, going back to attachment 1, this is the very detailed chart. It's page 3 now for the sheriff comparison. What we found, if you look at the very bottom right there, was an 8.89% below market total comp. That's in the yellow highlighting. What we're recommending then to try to bring it up is to recommend a $17,464.49 change. That is to the base without certification pay. And what this would, the percentage would be a 13.4% on the base without cert pay, or 12.6% on the base with certification pay. And I'm going to ask HR staff to help explain certification pay better than I can.
And actually Byron's in the room, so he can correct me if I get this wrong, but DPSST, Department of Public Safety and Standards and Training, is an organization that trains public safety officers, and there's different levels of certification, and our sheriff has the advanced level, and with that he gets a 6% premium pay. His chief deputy as well gets the 6% premium pay, and when we look at the ORS requirements of paying the sheriff above what his subordinates are making, we have to take that into consideration. So we did the calculations on that and projected forward into 2019 to make sure that we were giving enough of a bump in January of 2019 so that we didn't get into the middle of the year when this chief deputy is eligible for his merit, where we didn't have to come back and do an increase in order to get past that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, and it's a little bit unusual because of the cert pay, but also we found that because of the quote extra cert pay, some counties sort of build it in, we think, already, so they don't necessarily have, like there was one county I think that had a 0 or 2 of them, Clackamas and Deschutes. Actually, I apologize, all 5 had what's called 0% certification pay increase, but that's because it's already built into their salary. And I believe we checked, and because the board asked, and that those positions do require that certification as well.
Correct.
So it's sort of just a weird way it's done here, but it's still the total pay that you're looking at, which includes that certification pay. What this recommended salary bump would do would be to move this position of sheriff to 3.47% above the market total comp, again, kind of within that 5% in the other direction. And so that's what we're suggesting for year 1. Moving to justice of the peace then. And again, in attachment 1, we're looking at page 4. And this was one position where we did a lot of research into this and found that there was a difference here between Lane County and the other counties. We still did the 5 county comparison, and you can see that on attachment 1, page 4, as I said. But the caseload and personnel involved with this position was quite different. You can look at that at the top of this page where you have, under each county, you talk about the county FTE, the department FTE, and also the number of the caseload, which I'm just looking, we have it there for the other counties. We didn't list it for Lane, but it was much lower.
It was like 1,300.
1,300 versus some counties, 20,000 in Clackamas County, 11,000 Jackson County, 20,000 cases Marin County, and 3,000 in Washington County. And so we thought about it, we did discuss it, and we realized that currently that position is 8.89% below market total comp, again, at the bottom right in the,
5.19.
I'm sorry, 5.9, 5.19, I'm sorry, I misspoke, I was looking at a different number. So So for 5.19, I'm sorry, yes. And what we thought about was, given that the positions were so different, that we couldn't recommend, as we did with some of the others, a dollar increase that would seem appropriate based on the duties. However, we also felt that even with this position comparison being different, we didn't want this position to fall behind other Lane County employees. So what we said, or suggesting with the justice of the peace, is the 2% COLA, which again seems to be kind of a number that we're seeing with more of non-represented and represented folks. And again, it's what we're looking at year 2, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But sort of a straight 2% to the base, that would be about $933.48. That would move this position to 3.1% below market total comp. So it would still be below the market, but still within that 5% range that we look for. And also, given the difference in duties and workload, we felt comfortable with this sort of a quote standard 2% raise, if you will. Anything on justice of the peace? Is that good?
Yeah, we gave the JP a very large increase the last 2-year cycle.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's a good point too.
Yeah, 70%.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if you start with a lower number, obviously it's a huge percentage, but that's a very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Final position is commissioners. That's attachment 1, page 5. First, a little bit of history. Between 2008 and 2016, there were no increases. In 2017, there was an increase, and then again in 2018, the current year, there's no increase. What we found, as you see in the bottom right with the yellow highlight, is that using the 5 county comparators again, that we're 16.7% under market in terms of total comp. Now,
I'm going to get a job in Clackamas then.
I'm sorry. Say again?
I'm going to go to Clackamas and get a job.
Or you can find someone in the private sector caucus to go with your colleagues. No. The primary focus here, again, is try to keep pace with the market for the commissioner position. And despite the humor here, you're not necessarily going to go to Clackamas, but still we look at the 5 county for the same things. And we do look at county population, county FTO, all the sort of things that you see in the chart there as we look at these comparators. We also understand that moving salaries in large increments could be problematic or not the most easy or comfortable thing to think about. On the other hand, we didn't want to lose too much ground and then have to come back later for a large increase potentially. So we also, given the recognition from the board that it's a complex issue and knowing that we are obviously an advisory board and that we have our duty in the budget committee here, which of course includes the commissioners, it's its duty and the commissioners make the final rule, we felt that we would fulfill our duty as the advisory board that we are. And we decided we'd give options to try to make it a little bit clearer to understand, perhaps. Option 1 is a $15,149.89 increase per year. This is a 17.9% increase to the base, but this would also match the total comp. So we went straight to the average of the 5 counties that we were comparing to. And again, attachment 1, page 5, you can see that as you did with the others. In our mind, this option best supports the ability of Lane County to attract and retain strong county commissioners and is the option that we as the board do prefer. That said, I can go on to the other 2 options unless you have questions at that point. Maybe I should follow what you said and continue on.
I think we should keep going
Okay.
with the presentation and we
Appreciate
have
that.
plenty of time for discussion.
So option 2, we thought about it and recognizing the issues involved, we thought, well, what was the lowest of the 5 comparators? Which is Deschutes County. Thinking here is at least would bring us into the ballpark, to use an analogy. We'd be using a fair methodology that were at least somewhat within the 5, if not matching the average, at least we hit the lowest. So it sort of would be a second best case scenario in our mind. Doing that would be an increase of $7,961.67, which is a 9.4% increase to the base. And again, what that would do, at least would match the lowest of the 5 comparator counties, which again here is Deschutes County. That would still be 7.5% under market total comp, which is larger than you'd like to see. Again, 5% is sort of the norm. But it is a potential other option beyond the first option, which is looking at the average of the 5 counties. So we sort of took Deschutes as the lowest of those 5 and looked at that as another potential option. And finally, there's an option 3, where we said, put aside all this research and all our thoughts and deliberations and advice, and just go with the 2% COLA, which is what other folks seem to be getting in general. That would match other employee groups. It would still keep you at, keep the commissioner position at 14.6% under market of total comp, which again is pretty significant. So to that end, even though we present these three options, we still very strongly believe option one is the best way to go. That's year one. I probably have just a couple more minutes of the presentation, and then we can have more discussion. Year two is we figured if all these things were done at year one, that would kind of get us to where we should be. We then don't want to fall behind more. And so year two, quite simple, 2% COLA across the board for everybody. So the way we were looking at it is year one, get us to where we should be, and then year two, just kind of follow along with other employee groups. That would maintain the current position, not fall behind, et cetera. We did ask budget staff, and Christine, you may have more able to present on this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, did you want to address the question that you said to Commissioner Lycan that you would get back to as you presented this portion?
Oh, the Washington County situation.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder. And
That's
thank you. Washington County is unusual in that sense. It does have one, and you may be able to chime in a minute better than I, it does have one full-time chair of the board and then 4, I believe, part-time. And because of that unusual circumstance, we did look at what the FTE, the full-time person, would be getting, because we figured we don't have part-time commissioners. And so even though they do it that way, because everyone's different, we thought the best way to compare would be to look at the full-time position. And the thinking was if they ever changed from part-time to full-time, presumably they would increase whoever those part-time folks are up to a full-time FTE, as we call it in our business, full-time equivalent. Darcy, do you have more on that you want to?
Just a second.
Sure, sorry. Thank you, by the way, Lana, for
Sure,
reminding me about
no
that question.
problem.
I wanted to look and
Doing
see
some
what-
phone math?
Yeah, I'm doing some phone math here. Yes, we in fact did use the chair salary, the 108,784.
And again, it's not a perfect science. I know the chair, actually I shouldn't say, I don't know for sure. I don't think the chair here makes more than the other 4 commissioners, but again, they were an unusual circumstance, and we kind of thought of FTEs because that's what we do. Query whether the part-time people there only work part-time, I'm not sure exactly, but the structure they have at least is what we were going with. And like I said before, assuming the full-time, we wanted to look at full-time. Thank you for that. Commissioner Lycan, does that answer that question?
Yeah. Thank you.
In terms of cost, and this is something that we turn to budget people for, but I think we have in there at the page 10 or 12? 10, thank you. Or, sorry, 10 to 12.
Actually,
No, it's a different, I'm sorry. It's in the memo,
Page five.
page 5 to 6. So what we did is, given these recommendations that we're making, budget staff has put together what the projected cost would be for the 2 fiscal years for these increases. And you see it there for DA, sheriff, assessor, justice of the peace. And then they did put in all the different options for the commissioners that we also came up with. So these numbers, thank you, Christine, for that. But taking what we had recommended, this would be a kind of quick shot at looking at what the cost would be. From here, next steps would be we would ask the budget committee to approve a recommendation, forward it on to the Board of County Commissioners. As I said, it's been a really good, tough experience. As I said, it's my 3rd time personally going through this, and I think this group this year has worked harder and longer and really got into the weeds more than I think we even wanted to. But there were just issues that came up, and we really wanted to get it right. So thank you. It's been an honor to serve the county this way, and I welcome any questions.
I'll start with a comment. I'd like to please express my appreciation. I can't speak on behalf of the county, as I learned the other night, because, but speaking for myself, you guys have done an outstanding job as a committee. You're volunteers, you put in a lot of time, and I have to say this is the finest documentation I have seen in my years. I understand it, and that's saying something. So thank you to the committee. I think you did a great job with the parameters you have to work in and who you had what you were tasked to do. So thank you on behalf of Lane County. Can I say that?
Yeah, sounds good.
So with that, we are now going to we can go to close to 5 for deliberation, discussion. We have essentially 4 options, 5 options that were given to us in this report. I recognize the process, that what we do today is a recommendation to the commissioners. So I want to be sensitive to that part of the process, and so speak up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dennis. So, and I just want to echo what Dennis stated, really thorough, and really appreciate the information. When you look at the compensations, especially for the elected department heads, I mean, that's a pretty, it's kind of cut and dry. It's either, yes, we will, no, we won't. I mean, because you can do the comparables, you can really, I think, put some things in place. The commissioners is a little bit, it's really, it just becomes, I think, an opinion issue. It can be a political issue, obviously. And it really comes into play because Lane County, if you think about it, I think, is there 8 or 9 chartered counties? 9? And we're one of them. Yet on the comparables, Clackamas is not, Deschutes is not, Marion is not. And Jackson, I do not know. I don't think
Jackson's
that,
home rule.
are they general? Yeah.
No, they're home rule.
They're home rule? Yeah.
Jackson and Washington.
Yeah.
So even that, from that perspective, plus you have Clackamas and Washington are 5-member boards along with Lane, but the others are not. I mean, so really, it just becomes an issue of, how you want to frame it. And so I look forward to the discussion, I think, from everybody here at the table on really what the next move is. I do not believe you wait like we did before. You don't wait a decade. I just think that really, or 9 years, whatever it was. I think it just messes up the process. I think you could chew at it, a little bit every other year, whatever the case may be. I don't know, and it's really not up to me. Has a short timer, but. So those are some things. The other is when you look at comparables, like for instance, Washington and Clackamas County, their median incomes have to be overall with the county citizenship. They've got to be, the median income's got to be 25, 30 grand a year more than what it is in Lane County. I mean, it's got to be significant, especially Washington. But I think Clackamas is up there too. So they have significant higher median income on the comparables. I think even Deschutes County may be a little higher than Lane County. And so those are some things that you need to factor in as well. And overall, the workload. I mean, it just really comes down to what it is. I mean, we have 5 commissioners who represent districts, which again, there's a unique situation. And you represent districts, but yet you make decisions for the entire all of Lane County. So your districts are really constituency work, but yet you're making decisions for all of Lane County. And Lane County is a unique county in the fact that it's a big urban center, but so much of the decisions we make are for rural Lane County. So I really look at the workload. I know how much time I spent. It was significant. Plus the time that you're asked to work outside of Lane County, whether it's AOC, whether it's NACO, whether it's the different organizations you're working with to try to bring influence or dollars or whatever the case may be back to Lane County. So that's really it's really a comment more than anything else. But I think what you've done here is you made it pretty. I think you simplified it. There's a direction to go, and I'm only speaking to the commissioners. Either get it to where it should be based on the information, or you just do a little bit at a time. And I think that because how you have put this together, I think you've done a very, very good job. And it's a decision that will need to be made. but you have framed it in a way that now you can look at it and say, which way to go, period. And I don't think there's not a lot of hem-haw here. So I appreciate the work you've done.
Actually, to kind of chip away at this a little bit, I am very much in favor of this, basically right-sizing in year one, and then coming back to the 2% portion for year two. I think it makes a lot of common sense. So I'm definitely in favor of that methodology. As far as the commissioner compensation, because that's where there's really some options that have been presented to us and so forth. There was a long period of time here where the commissioners basically just forewent those, and that's got us into the position we are now. And I'd like to see that headed back to where it really should be. So I guess with that, I'm not in favor of option 3 at all. But I'm open to hear other people's thoughts on that commissioner piece.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So, just, as a thought of one way of expediting this process a little bit, after hearing the explanation about the deputy DA, understanding where the assessor sits in its assessment and taxation, not just assessor, and where they sit relative to department heads and the junior employee there, where the sheriff sits relative to the chief deputy, I am comfortable with and also I know where just JP sits also. Those 4 positions and recommendations for both the first and second year of the compensation board, I am happy with all those and fully supportive. Maybe we could, think about maybe dealing with those in a motion and then move on to probably a much more detailed and far-flung opinions on the commissioners' salaries.
I would agree. Do I hear a motion to discuss district attorney, assessor, sheriff, justice of the peace, and
I move we accept the recommendations for those 4 positions.
okay?
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to accept the district attorney at 11,955, assessor at 16,812. I'm going to round those numbers. Sheriff at 17,464, and justice of the peace at 933.
And subsequent 2% per annum.
And subsequent 2%, yes, for each of those positions. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Would the
Opposed?
life was this easy?
Is it opposed?
Would the life was this easy?
No, it's not.
Commissioner Farr, are you speaking in opposition?
No, I said aye already.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. So now we're on back to discussion of the commissioner salaries.
Let's let them discuss it.
Yeah.
Gosh, I wish we had more of our lay citizens here. But I guess we have 3 out of 4. We have an empty position. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear more from the lay citizens on this matter, because this is really the place for you guys to have your input. The commissioners will get another shot at this. So I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say.
I'll say something. I think you all deserve the recommended increase. I'm just a little concerned from a public perception that it's a large increase. So I don't know, something, certainly I agree with her, not option 3, but something in the middle, maybe.
Okay. Herb?
I already spoke about this a little bit.
Okay.
Chair, I'll speak after you do again.
Okay, I'll throw in a few comments. Perception is reality. We've all heard that before, so no matter what we do in the community, it's going to be perceived the way it's perceived, and that's their reality. I do reflect back to the last time we did this a year or two ago. The theme was we need to get to where we need to be, and there were substantial raises for very valid reasons. And here we are again a year or two later, and I'm hearing the same thing. So that, as a citizen, that tells me we're going to hear the same thing when we do this again in a year or two, that based on the process that the EOCB uses, we're always going to be behind. And it's kind of self-perpetuating, because I don't know, but I suspect other counties are going to go through this process and see what Lane County did, and they're going to say, well, we need to be above. This is a self-perpetuating thing. So I'm a little worried about that. I don't have a suggestion, but I think there could be a better process. Again, the EOCB did an outstanding job under the guidelines, but perhaps the guidelines are flawed, or we need a better system. And I don't know here and now what that might be. I also see a disparity. The chief deputy gets merit pay based on certification and things that person does. And so maybe we should stop that person from getting an education, so the sheriff can play the same. Somebody just made the comment that perhaps the chair of the Board of Commissioners should get a little extra compensation for the extra work that they are doing, and that's not in the report we have, but I would just throw that out there, that I think would be consistent with community beliefs. So back to my position on the options, I kind of struggle a little bit, because option one for the individual, the district attorney, assessor, sheriff, justice of the peace, has a very valid methodology, again, based on the current rules. But now we're saying, well, the commissioner wanted 15,145, which followed that same theory and logic and work. Now we're going to say, well, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go based on the lowest county commissioner salary. And yet we didn't do that for the other position. So I'm at a bit of a quandary. But I would say, again, perception being reality in the community, I would probably favor option two, salary bump for the commissioners at $79.61, kind of where I'm sitting at this point in time. Herb?
And to kind of follow up, that my problem with option two is I really hate to shoot to be at the bottom of the barrel, right? I mean, that seems like a kind of an not the type of goal that represents this community and the type of results we expect out of our county commissioners. So that's I'm a bit challenged with that. I agree with the fact that the perception for option one is probably not something that people are really going to. People aren't going to understand it without all the facts here. This is a great document. It has everything in it. Nobody outside is going to read this. So, and if they did, I think they'd be able to swallow this pill a lot easier. So, just taking those realities into case and trying to make some headway forward, I'd really be favoring kind of stepping someplace in the middle between 1 and 2. And I must admit, it would be like just kind of pulling a number out of the middle, because with all these, they've got backing the fact that we were matching with Deschutes for number 2, and where number 1 was really designed to do math in accordance with the way we did math on the rest of the elected officials. So, not to stray away from the great recommendations that we've been presented with, but to try to chip away at about the low compensation level there is with the commissioners. So there's a thought that I've had.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out on the attachment one, page 5 of the Commissioner's information. At the very top of that document, there's a section called demographics. And there's a line that says notes. And in there, we included the amount of the COLAs that the other counties were awarding for your information if you wanted to look at that. And all of them have, you know, as far as chasing the other counties, all of them received COLAs in the last year or as of 7/1/18. And so, like, I just wanted to point that out, that and in one case, it was a 6.4% increase in Clackamas. So they are consistently giving increases in the other counties.
And we would expect that going forward as well.
I would expect at least something. You know, some counties use CPI numbers, others just do a COLA. Why Clackamas did 6.4%, I don't know. That, to me, looks like some sort of a market adjustment as well, in addition to just a cost of living.
And what's the CPI right now?
Well, I think the last time we looked at it, it was 2.9.
Yeah, it was kind of end of last year.
Okay.
Other comments? Go ahead.
So I really appreciate the lay citizens, you know, desire to get us at the correct compensation for the market and all that stuff, but it does have political ramifications, and the folks outside aren't going to read through, you know, 24 pages of documentation and understand why you guys are making that recommendation. What they see, and they don't see what all these other counties, and I want to appreciate Darcy for getting this information for me and passing it out. I asked for that information about how the other counties are organized, how many commissioners they have, you know, what their duties are, whether they had a county administrator, because it varies wildly across the state.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure our 5 comparators were really good comparators for commissioners, because there are other counties where the commissioners actually act as department heads and have administrative duties and are managers and direct personnel supervisors and all that. So it's far different, you know, if you go to Douglas County, it's a far different job than it is in Lane County. So there is a lot. What's interesting, though, is our 5 comparators all are fairly similar. I was surprised about that. And even though some are general law and some are home rule. So that was an interesting comparison. But it gets down to what do the local folks see as we, as a board, adopt compensation for ourselves. We're stuck in a situation, and it's you can't prevent this. The only people that can change our compensation are the people receiving the compensation.
Right, yeah.
And it's just reality of the situation.
Yep.
We can't delegate that to the elected official compensation board. We can't delegate it to the county administrator. It has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners ultimately. And what local people are going to see is, you know, what does the governor make? He already makes less than us in some ways, when you think about it. I think, what's he make, 90,000?
99.
Yeah, it's pretty, you know, when you think about what he's managing. You know, what does a city councilor in Eugene make? You know, and that's the sort of.
My first 8 years, nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where people will immediately go, is comparing us to some of those other places, and, you know, what kind of increases are they seeing? So it, you know, where I agree with, you know, that desire, but the one thing I also have to temper this with is, what is our financial condition compared to our 5 comparators? And when you look at those 5 counties, none of them are dealing with the issue we've had to deal with when it comes to our permanent tax rate and the lack of timber funding. You know, Clackamas has been hurt a little bit, maybe, but they already had a pretty heavy permanent tax rate, and they have multiple districts feeding them. Deschutes, you know, has a fairly low permanent tax rate, but they really never were fed with forest funds, but they've also passed districts to support public safety, so they have additional permanent tax rates. Jackson's fat. I don't know what their tax rate is, but they've always been fat compared to us. Marion's, you know, in a much better situation. I think they're 3-something permanent tax rate.
Over $3.
You know, compared to our $1.28. Washington, I don't even want to start comparing resources with Washington. So when you look at our comparators and about the financial capabilities to pay, the, ability to pay side of things, which comes in when we're negotiating with unions, what's our ability to pay? I have a tendency to say, okay, I can understand us, when you just compare duties and everything else, yes, we're under market. But if you start edging in what's our financial ability to pay the commissioners, and the fact that there are 5 of us, so there is much more impact financially from an increase for us. I would tend to recommend caution in how big of an increase we give ourselves. I do believe the 2% second-year COLA is a good idea, so we don't keep falling way behind. It's also in line with everything we've done with every bargaining unit so far in the county. But, you do look, we took our non-reps and chopped off the bottom step and added another step. And, which, depending on which bargaining unit you're talking about, that's 3.5% to 5%, additional compensation on top of their 2% COLAs. When we looked at the ASME unit and went in and did a market analysis midterm, those positions, we did very similar analysis, 5 county comparators, and where we saw out of market, we actually changed ranges by as much as 4 steps in some cases, which is 10%. Plus their 2% COLAs that are built in. So, we've made some pretty major adjustments as needed. Our psychiatrists, we dropped 3 steps and added 3, on their compensation. So there are places we have done pretty big jump ups, and that's why we can justify some of the other elected department heads. But politically, it'll be much more charged with this one, and you heard, how distorted people did the last raise. They kind of forgot about the 10 years of no raises and tried to place it all as a single year raise instead of like working out that it was a little bit over 1% a year. In compensation, because people just don't do that math. All they're going to hear is how big the raise was. So, I kind of lean somewhere between option 2 and option 3. Not quite going as big as that 9.4%. Something that will be palatable to the public. Most people are seeing, employers give them out, somewhere between 3 and 5% raises in the current market, in the private sector. So I'm, seeing a 9% raise is going to probably generate a headline. I'll just be honest with you. So, politically, I know it's tough and we're not going to catch up, but I think it's just, one of the places where we can kind of explain being behind the curve, partly because until we're financially more sound, there's reasons for us to stay behind the curve.
I would pose a question to the commissioners. Based on all of the salary negotiations that have gone on with the represented people and the non-rep people, based on that alone, what do you think you can justify for yourselves based on what you've done for others? What number would that be?
A few years ago, I recommended that we get paid a percentage of what the U of O head football coach gets. And several people said, well, that is wrong. That would be more comparable of what the county administrators should make, not what we should make. And so I dropped back and I said, okay, how about we get paid just half of what the assistant coaches get paid? Not the coach, but the assistant coaches. And someone asked me, well, how much is that? And I said, I have no idea. Well, guess what? I have since learned what that is. And I was shocked that the offensive coordinator makes less than the defensive coordinator.
Much less.
Quite a bit less.
And that'll show up on Saturday.
Yeah, so, I mean, 1.7 million is the current salary of the defensive coordinating assistant coach. And the offensive coordinator makes $750,000. Now, at the time, the Ducks were winning so much that argument fell apart. Because, hey, are we winning? at the county. No, we weren't at the time. But the ducks were. But now the situation appears to maybe be changing.
Well, here,
So,
you can get-
I will just go back to this. With all due respect to what will the public think, that's not what the charter says we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to make the decision on what the public would think. If that was true, it would say, please make this decision after you receive your recommendation from your compensation board and add in, what would the public think, okay? So I think it's great to talk about how much the ducks are paid, because for a millisecond, I thought you guys were going in that direction. Now I don't. But I also think that having this conversation about, well, what will the public think about whether or not we adopt the recommendations of the professionals that have been, and by the way, I think Dennis said this, this is the best job, I don't know if it should be Josh alone or these two or all four of you or all the members, but seriously, this is one of the best and most thorough documentations that we've ever received at this budget committee, really. So I just think that we ought to just make the decision, and it's a good decision. We already made 3/4 of that decision in our first vote. So I personally think we should go and implement their recommendation. And I don't mean, like blending it. I mean taking the one that'll get us to the midpoint.
So you're talking option 2.
Option 2. No, yeah, option 2.
Okay.
Option 2.
Well, I would, may make a quick comment before we lose your train of thought. If you could get 41,000 people to pay $50 to come to a commissioner meeting,
Yeah.
we probably could get to the assistant coach level.
Well, we get 300,000 people to pay a little bit each
Yeah.
without revolting against us.
That's true.
So,
And I would say that one of my things for 15 years has been trying to improve the perception of Lane County government in the community. And so what the public thinks is critical to me and is as valuable or more valuable than getting a better bond rating. We worked hard to do that, and we need to continue to work hard to improve our perception in the community. Go ahead.
Just, if I may add just two quick things. One is, first, thank you for the kind words. I really have to thank HR staff and my colleagues on the board too. But no, we took it very seriously and had great support. And like I said, in my 3 times doing this, this was the most, we thought, hey, could we do it in one meeting? And no, and then we had 2 more meetings and they were 3 hours each or something. I mean, it was, I guess a lot of you are used to meetings, as I am too, but it was something. So the second, I just want to, one thing that Commissioner Sorensen just said, if you're talking about the midpoint or I take it an average, then that would be option 1, not 2. I don't want to speak for you, but I want to
yeah,
make sure
no,
I understand.
1.
Because 2 was the Deschutes, the lowest
Yeah.
of the 5.
Okay.
The average was the.
Okay. Commissioner Farmer?
I would be in favor of option 1 with this caveat. I believe it should take effect after the next election cycle. That we remain with a 2% COLA, whatever it may be, until then, but after the next election cycle, which would cycle through, and none of us ran on that particular salary. We ran on this salary. And so the next election, not the one in November, but the one 2 Novembers from then. That is my caveat. Option 1 seems the right thing to do, to put this position. I'm not going to say us, to put future commissions in an equitable position with other commissioners in similar counties. And Sid, there is no county like Lane. This is the only real county. So that being said, that would remove the onus from us of increasing our own salaries, and to get that salary, we'd have to earn it in the next election cycle.
Okay, good. There's option 14B. Other comments? Go ahead.
I appreciate the creativity of Commissioner Farr. I would have to consult legal counsel to see if we could even do that. The EOCB is supposed to meet actually annually, or they're supposed to propose an annual schedule. And the increases cannot be effective until the first of the year following a general election. So I don't know how it would work to future date it out that far.
If I can.
Go ahead.
The piece that Darcy has just mentioned is built in for the very reason that Commissioner Farr just mentioned. So I think that sets the floor. I think the board could, on its own, extend that out further. You couldn't shorten it, is my point.
Okay.
So what I say
The idea from that, the way that I believe that that's built in is for the very reason that you mentioned, Commissioner Farr.
So that we could do that.
Which is that if you vote yourself a raise, you're gonna face a general, you can't vote yourself a raise and avoid an election, is what I'm trying to say.
The suggestion is
Could
wait
we-
2 elections.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is you put that out, what I'm saying is you're eventually gonna have to stand and run on it. What I'm saying is you can't shorten it up and avoid it, is what I'm trying to say.
Could we reverse the order and do a 2% COLA for 2019 and do option 1 or 2 amounts in 2020?
That would still be in the same election cycle.
Yeah, you could, as long as it meets that minimum requirement of the taking effect. You can vote for it, but it can't take effect until there's been that election.
Okay, okay.
And what I'm saying is if the proposal from Commissioner Farr is to put it farther ahead, I don't see a problem with that. I see a problem with trying to shorten it.
Short, okay. Okay.
And so when I say shorten it, I mean take effect.
Right.
So to provide a little bit of an answer to Commissioner Sorensen, the reason why is in the Pac-12, when you have to exclude Stanford and USC because they're private universities and they don't have to disclose a thing. But Oregon was the #1 sports athletic generator in the Pac-12, including Washington, and ranked number 12 in the nation. And that's one of the reasons why they could. And the defensive coordinator was one of the hottest defensive coordinators in the country.
That's true.
So to keep him here, they had to pay him.
He
And
makes
it's not
over
$50
$2
for
million.
40,000, it's $80 for 59,000.
Okay. I
Dennis, did we get a ruling on this proposal? I mean, it sounds like it would be okay to do this, like to have no change in compensation until January 5, 2021, because that's 2 general elections from today, so therefore it would be allowed, right?
To answer your question, yes, based on a nod, but I haven't heard a motion
Yeah.
to discuss, to support what Commissioner saying.
Can I have one thing, and I'll turn to you on this. I think we as a board are required to meet every 2 years before the general election.
Yeah.
Is that
So-
right? Meaning we would be required to meet by July 31st of 2020. But I don't know what we would do as a board then if, I don't want to talk out of turn, you may be the better one to speak to this. But if the commissioners were to vote later to do an increase in 2021 and 2022, would we still be able to meet? Because we're required to meet, right?
So,
Go ahead.
So, and I am looking at county council for this. So my wondering is if that was the vote now to be in effect later, we still have the other elected official positions that advisory board could still meet, convene, make recommendations to bring back to this group, and just recognize the outstanding decision that had been put forth for 2021?
Well,
Is that correct?
That's correct, but they could they could make, I think the thing that people forget all the time is this is an advisory board.
Mhm.
There's nothing that prevents you from reviewing their salaries and proposing another raise. There's nothing, you recommend it, they don't have to, as has been demonstrated in years past, they're not required to accept it. So what they do, they referring to the board, doesn't dictate what you do. You're free to do nothing, make more recommendations, do whatever, so.
I believe that the materials I've reviewed is that the elected officials compensation board meets annually for the purpose of reviewing and making recommendations to the budget committee. So it's a ongoing process of reviewing all of these salaries. It's correct, as Steve points out, just because there's a meeting and there's a consideration and there's a recommendation doesn't mean that that'll get acted on in any given year by the budget committee or by the board. But it is an ongoing function. And so if the budget committee decides today to raise the salaries as we have recommended already, and that's the end of the meeting and that stands, then those decisions will get implemented and get forwarded to the board for consideration. But if the budget committee decides, well, we don't really want to go with this, we want to go with it in a certain sense by either having a COLA or no COLA, or putting it all forward 2 election cycles, that's certainly something the budget committee has the power to do. But I don't think that changes what you guys do. I think what you guys do is review it all every year, and that's your recommendation every year.
And again, if I can, Commissioner, I just mentioned to Darcy, I personally believe you've all commented on the excellent job that they did. There's value in collecting this information on an annual basis.
Right.
If nothing else, going out and going to the comparables and finding out what the COLAs are, finding out those different things. There's value in that because you're going to have a consistent year-to-year record as opposed to every.
And I also add that the knowledge of the members of the elected officials compensation board about what the commissioners do or don't do in their jobs is a factor, because as was pointed out, commissioners in Lane County are different than commissioners in Washington County and have different responsibilities. But if the elected officials compensation board doesn't hear from them, then it's unlikely they'll learn that. And I went to one myself about 15 years ago, and they said, oh, well, commissioners, they don't even work full-time, do they? And they really didn't. And I said, well, here's the charter. It says they work full-time. I don't know if they all do, but it says they do. That's at least something that you should know. And at the time, the members did not know that. They thought, well, we looked in several counties, commissioners are part-time, so we thought the Lane County, they really did. So I set them straight. I showed them my email list.
You've been very quiet.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
So, looking at, kind of reading some of the tea leaves around the table, I came in thinking I was going to vote for option 3. I'll be honest, because that's, where I think we are resource-wise somewhat, and it's consistent with the COLAs we're giving our bargaining units. But we have given a lot of positions based on market adjustments, and then also COLAs. So I was thinking if we did a 3% market adjustment each year with the 2% COLA for a total of 5% each year, doesn't quite get us to where option 2 gets us after 2 years. It gets us to $93,113.97, and the option 2 gets us to $94,267. Still the lowest paid commissioners in the comparables. I know we're not quite catching up, but at least 5% might be easier to, more palatable for the public to understand that 3% is a market adjustment, 2% is a COLA in each of those years, and rather than a straight up almost 10%, because the way it's going to get reported is 10% increase. For the board in the first year, followed by a 2%, where 5% increases each year. 5% doesn't sound completely out of the range of what private sector employees are seeing. That's just a thought as a compromise.
Did you calculate that 3%, 2%, or 5%?
I did it as 1.05 for each year.
Okay.
5% made up of 3% being for market and 2% being for cost of living.
We do them in a certain order, though, don't we?
We
We
do
do market
market
and then
and then
COLA on
COLA.
top of it.
So it's 3 and
Slightly
2.
different, but yeah.
That's why I asked.
I just did it straight as 1.05, sorry. We're
If
not
you ever
gonna
buy
put any-
commodities
If
on
you
a
do it your
wholesale
way, we'll be
basis,
even
you
closer to the
understand that.
94,000.
Right. It's a
Percentages.
slight different.
Yeah.
It is the
Compound
compounding.
sum, yeah.
Yeah.
Us calculating nerds back here to get the sense
Yeah.
right.
Just like buying commodities. 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Doesn't
So just-
equal 11.
That's just a thought of a way to skin the cat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I've been listening to a lot of this. I really do, as others, appreciate this document. I think it's excellent, well presented. But I'm also mindful of those citizens that we represent who haven't had a raise in a long, long time. And I just don't feel comfortable asking for more compensation in the face of all those hardworking people we represent who have not had a raise, have not had adjustments in their compensation at whatever job they're working at. I'm sensitive to that, and so I cannot support any change in compensation going forward. But I do appreciate all the comments, because it gave me a great deal to ponder and think about, but that's what I'm at.
Okay.
Does anybody care to make a motion?
Yeah, we need to provide, as a budget committee, a recommendation to the board.
So I would support Commissioner Bozovich's suggestion that we do a 3% market adjustment and then a 2% COLA on top of that this year and next year.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. So been moved and seconded to provide 3-year
Market adjustment.
What is that called?
A 3% market adjustment.
Market adjustment and
Plus-
2% COLA this year and next year.
And
I think you'd want to say
Effective-
effective January 2019.
first full pay
January
period.
Right.
2020.
Right. Okay, and that's been seconded.
Trying to get
So
it
we're all
in.
sitting there.
Okay.
January's effective.
I have a question about this. So in the materials that you guys provided, where would we look to see where this proposal would, where we compare this proposal to what research you guys did?
So on attachment 1,
Yeah,
on the last page of that attachment 5,
okay.
is the commissioner's comparison. And so if you were to add 5% to the 8457.12 current salaries, it would calculate it down, although not on a hard copy.
So on page 5 of that attachment, I'm seeing across the top the various counties.
Correct.
And then Lane County,
Is the
and
colored
it tells
one.
us the population and tells us the annual base salary and the total compensation without insurance. Those are the two big lines there. And then, what is the last one? Total compensation with insurance.
The 96064.55 is ours, Lane
Yeah.
County, and then the 112,119 is the average of all the 5 counties.
I see.
And that's where the 16.7% out of market, that's where that comes from.
So with this proposal, it's a market 3, COLA 2 for 2 years,
For 19 and 20.
19 and 20, I see. What would the number be then if, instead of 16.7?
I think she's
think we're trying to
working
get
those
there.
numbers right now, so
Okay.
that she can give you that picture.
Are you looking at it in terms of the total compensation, comparing it to the comparators? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Bless you.
It's going to add somewhere in the range of 4,200 a year.
And it drops us to 11.5% under market.
Under market, instead of
First in year one?
Yes.
16.7%.
Anybody get a different number than
I was doing both years, so
Okay.
I went too far. I went too far, all right.
Yeah.
What does it do in the second year?
Well, I didn't do the percentage. I
Okay.
just figured out the 2-year total change would be about 87.63. So. I'm trying to
Which
think
is
back.
more than option 2.
Right, and that was the 3%, and then the 2%, you know, the compound.
Yeah, option 2 is 9.4% increase. And the motion before us is essentially a 10%, so the number should be.
Well, option 2 is 9.4 the first year, 2% second.
Okay.
It's the
Right.
compounding effect of 5%
Right.
in the second
Got it,
year,
got it,
got it.
5% on top of 5%.
Yeah.
But
It's just under what option 2 is. It's just a different, it's doing it a little bit more progressively over the full time period rather than doing it all at once up front.
Okay, further discussion on the motion. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries.
Just have one of those.
All right,
No, you had 2 opposed,
Yeah,
Right.
what was the?
do the math here again.
Gary and Pat.
So it's 5-2,
Yeah.
correct? Is that,
8.
We should have 8 of you, yeah.
Yeah.
I voted yes.
okay, so it's 6-2.
Correct.
Okay. So does that conclude our business?
I'll just explain my no vote, because it still keeps this board, the future boards, out of parity with other counties. And it puts us in the untenable position of raising our own salaries, which we're compelled to do. We're compelled to review our own salaries, but I'd rather review the next commissioner's salary than my own.
Understood. It's a system.
That being said, I might be the next commissioner, so.
That's true. Again, from where I sit, I don't think there's anything more important than the CEOs of the organization, the quality of those folks to get the organization to where it's trying to get to. And also, when we're looking at commissioner salaries and comparables, how does the staff at Lane County compare in their support to the commissioners to make them, or allow them to make good decisions compared to the other counties? And I don't know the other counties, but I know Lane County, and again, the staff does an excellent job to help the commissioners make good decisions, and there's value in that. Okay, so we've conducted, finish item 3. We have passed a motion to go to the board, and that's going to be a very interesting meeting. I would like to add item 3A, new business. We need bylaws as a budget committee. We do not have them, and we had excellent instruction last week that all committees should have bylaws. So I will suggest county administrator, budget staff, budget committee, think about that, and our next meeting, I assume, will be towards the budget cycle next May, so we have time. Your thoughts?
You may not be surprised to know that Christine actually has a draft of some
Okay.
bylaws that done a bit ago, and really appreciate it coming forward at this stage in the game. I think it's one of those things, it's very timely for us to do this. We probably should have bylaws in place already, but there's been a lot of other work that's been going on, so the timing of having that discussion, and that you just did the training, and that you're committed to developing bylaws and supporting those before we get into the budget process, it works really well. So we can think about the timing of that, because what I wouldn't want is for us to get into the budget cycle and then you're dealing with bylaws. We really should deal with the bylaws in advance of that.
Right.
So either December or January, sort of before we kick off and launch into the budget cycle would be a good time.
Okay. I guess I'm more interested in the process that you're suggesting we follow, and we have the time, so I trust you. I know you can shepherd that process through. Commissioner Sorensen?
On the topic of the bylaws, maybe we could set up another budget meeting to discuss the bylaws so that it's way in advance of the next budget cycle. And are we allowed to do that, Steve?
Well, I was gonna say, there's some, I mean, I know there's limitations on when the budget committee can meet, right?
Yes, yes, I can add to that, is that you can actually talk about bylaws, how meetings are conducted, all of that in your orientation type meeting. So that's not it's a public meeting, but it's not one that we typically televise unless you really wanted to televise talking about your bylaws. So yes, we can call that meeting at any point before the budget message.
Are you saying we're prohibited from just calling a budget committee meeting?
Technically,
simply-
yes, you are.
Yeah.
Technically, the Oregon
Okay.
Department of Revenue has said until that budget message occurs, you're not supposed to meet
So,
as a
yeah,
committee, and they recognize
that was my
that doesn't-
point, is
yeah.
that
Okay.
if they can work on that, but we can have that early in the process,
Okay.
as early as the legal counsel believes we can formally meet, that would be my suggestion.
Do the bylaws say we can't meet?
Probably they should.
Statute says.
Statute says-
And
So-
Mr. Chair,
Right.
the other thing, well, I just wanted to finish that, but I just want to be recognized on another matter.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to report that, thanks to Ms. Moody and her excellent staff, there has been a public announcement of the opening of the citizen position on the budget committee that's currently unfilled. And that closed, that public period closed on Friday. And so I am now going to review all of the people that applied, and will make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners probably within a month.
Okay, all right.
Admirable process, Pete.
Christine, so you've done some draft bylaws. Is it legal for us to see those and comment and have serial meetings to discuss?
Getting nervous, look
I
at
need to
that.
go back and look at, it's
Okay.
really been like a year and a half probably since I
Okay,
looked at
all
that.
right.
So see what state I
Okay.
left them in and then.
I'll work with Christine. I
Okay.
think the idea, without looking, have not looked at the budget law for a while, we probably can do that as long as if it's just people looking at it, as long as you're not getting together.
And not copying
And
each other.
not calling each other, not replying all, and
Right.
not
Well,
texting, and.
I understand, again, I paid good attention the other night, and I understand that, but supposedly the Budget Committee is one of the most, if not the most important committee of the county.
Oh, it's the most important.
It is. Well, there's other people that were in that room that day that are very passionate and very, have done outstanding work. It seems to be hamstrung.
And we're just stuck with the state budget law, that's
Okay,
what
all
makes
right.
it difficult.
Okay,
But I would say this, the overall message the same one that I delivered to the other committees is, I personally believe it's really important to discuss and have the bylaws adopted before you have to apply them to a substantive problem.
okay.
That way it's objective. If you start making the rules after the problem comes up, it's inevitable that the
Yes.
two get intertwined.
Got it.
Just to be clear, I wasn't saying that you can't get together and talk about them. I was saying that you can before an official meeting.
Okay.
So they have this orientation type pre-meeting that's a public meeting.
Okay.
It's just not quite as formal as those meetings when we're down in Harrison.
Although I don't like to say this, I think this is in good hands. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned. Thank you all.